Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. Alright, now that we've all seen the Spider-Man trailer and we've all pointed out the pumpkin bomb and the Ditko graffiti, let's actually stop and ask ourselves, what the actual is going on here? Alright, so just like we covered in our Easter egg video, Peter is dealing with the repercussions of Far From Home's secret identity reveal, so he asked Doctor Strange for help.
I was wondering if maybe you could make it so that he never did.
So here's what I think is actually going on here. Strange is not casting a forgetting spell.
Look right here.
This is a spell to alter reality. Strange is going to make it so people never knew that Peter was Spider-Man. This is why Wong gives him such a stern warning.
Strange.
Don't cast that spell.
I think Strange would have learned this spell from the Book of Cagliostro. That's the Book of Time that he was not supposed to take from the Carmartage Library. That book contained all sorts of forbidden spells. Remember, Caecilius stole pages from that book to open a portal to the Dark Dimension. And by the way, the Dark Dimension is also part of the multiverse. All of those weird Doctor Strange dimensions are.
Who are you in this vast multiverse?
So, this Book of Time has the ability to alter space-time, which is part of the space-time continuum, which is another way of saying all of these timelines that are contained within the sacred timeline that we saw in the finale of Loki. Confused? Here we go. Reality equals time equals different timelines. So Strange, by altering reality, is actually tweaking the timeline. There was actually a terrific episode of Rick and Morty in Season 4 that adopted a similar premise. Morty thinks that he's able to travel back in time like save points in a video game. But then it's revealed that he was actually shifting between different realities.
Every time you reset to smell Jessica's hair, every time you relive the satisfying fart, that's how many Mortys you've incinerated, you greedy little junkie.
Strange even kind of confirms that this is what's happening here.
We tampered with the stability of space-time.
So, you know those shots in the trailer where Peter is falling and then the city's folding in on itself? I don't think this was caused by the spell. I think this is a sequence where Strange explains the concept of space-time and the multiverse to Peter, and by extension, to the audience. So I think that Peter gets Strange's help and then they part ways. Then Peter realizes the universe is messed up, like Marty discovering Hell Valley in Back to the Future 2. And then Peter returns to Strange like Marty returned to Doc, so he can explain what's happened to Marty and to the audience.
Somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985.
Now I think this because of the train sequence. This is an elevated train, like the one that runs through Forest Hills where Peter lives, and yet it appears in the Grand Canyon. This is Steven using a train as a metaphor for a timeline, as a linear sequence of events. The multiple trains represent different timelines, and if this imagery looks familiar, it's because we saw something similar in Loki. So we explained this fully in our Showrunner Explain Timelines video, but essentially, each line here represents a different timeline. One where Loki is an alligator, Loki as a kid, etc. And all of these different timelines join together to form the sacred timeline, much like the strands of a rope. In the same way, each of these trains represents a different reality with a different Spider-Man. So there's a few things this could mean. Strange could be explaining that they have splintered reality, creating new universes, but this would imply that the Raimi and Webb films were just variants of the MCU. I don't really think that's the case. I think it's more likely that they have created gaps in their own timeline, like tears in the space-time continuum. So then, other timelines can bleed over and cross into these gaps. Notice that when the multiple trains appear, the train goes off the tracks, implying that there was a set order to the flow of reality. But now, these other trains, the other universes, are pushing Peter's timeline off its tracks. The channel New Rockstars even pointed out that during the spell, there was originally one circle representing one timeline. And then, every time Peter changes his mind, a new circle appears, perhaps representing the MCU, the Raimiverse, the Mark Webb universe, and the new Venomverse. So when the spell goes awry, these rings collide, like timelines colliding, and then they're left standing above a void that's very much like what we saw at the end of the universe in Loki. Strange says,
The problem is you trying to live two different lives.
So I've got a theory about what this means. Remember when Peter and Aunt May have looked up all surprised at someone? Now in our Easter egg video, I theorized that this was Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire. But what if they're actually looking at Tom Holland? Then they'll make some joke like, oh no, not a clone. And then guys who read Spider-Man comics in the mid-90s will lean over to their wives and explain that joke. So what if if Strange's spell literally splits Peter in two, so he's able to live his life as Spider-Man with no one knowing his identity, but he's also still Peter Parker, and that Peter Parker has no powers and no idea that he used to be Spider-Man. So it's not that people have forgotten that Peter is Spider-Man, it's that he never was Spider-Man once reality is altered. And this weird multiplication of Peters keeps happening, like the trains. And part of that multiplication will be Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. So instead of timelines splitting off and branching like we saw in Loki, Strange and Peter have actually caused them to multiply at an exponential rate. So this idea of somebody else living the life of Spider-Man is something that Peter has always wanted in the comics and in the movies. The chance to live a normal life while knowing that someone else was out there protecting people. He wants to be free of the burden of great power and great responsibility. And this is a great theme to wrap up this trilogy of films. Much like Spider-Man 2, Peter's been given the chance to walk away, but chooses to stay. And also, side note, I like that being Spider-Man has become more and more of a burden for Peter. When the series started, he wanted to be Spider-Man for the prestige and fun of being an Avenger, but every movie has shown him how much of a drag it is to be a hero. In the comics, Spider-Man was always an obligation for Peter Parker, but he could never walk away from it, even though being Spider-Man made his life way harder. So I actually think that part of the reason all of this is able to happen is because of the events of Loki. So spoilers for that finale just ahead. So in the last episode, Sylvie killed He Who Remains, causing the multiverse to split and fracture. This meant that there were no longer time cops to step in and fix reality when someone disrupted the flow of time.
Time, mother.
Not only that, but the billions of fracturing timelines at the ending of Loki could also make it easier for the different universes to cross over and bleed into one another.
Hello, Peter.
So maybe Strange's spell wouldn't have caused quite as much of a disruption if Hawk hadn't hated stairs. So I'm also very curious to know what this device could be. Did Peter take it from Strange's home because it allows him to warp reality? Or is this a hint that Doctor Strange is secretly the villain of the movie? So it's time to talk about how dumb and stupid Strange acts in this trailer. He was warned in his solo film about interfering with reality.
Temporal manipulations can create branches in time. Unstable dimensional openings. Spatial paradoxes. Time loops.
And this sure as hell looks like a spatial paradox to me. It's also weird that Strange flat out ignores Wong's warning.
Strange, don't cast that spell. It's too dangerous.
I think you know where I'm going with this.
Mephisto confirmed. Not the beast.
So if you didn't follow the whole WandaVision Mephisto saga, here's what happened. WandaVision was a very weird show, very cryptic, so we all combed through it for clues. Like these.
Unleash hell, demon spawn!
The devil's in the details, Bev.
That's not the only place he is.
Making me and a few other YouTubers believe that the secret villain of the show was Mephisto, the devil from Marvel Comics. Well,
I was wrong.
We ain't found
but then everyone got so invested in their Mephisto theories that they hated the finale, which was actually really good and made me cry, damn it.
Strong men also cry.
But guys, Mephisto actually fits perfectly into this. First of all, this happens in the comics. Peter reveals his identity to the world, then strikes a bargain with Mephisto to erase everyone's memories. In this trailer, Strange is acting like an idiot. He's not an idiot. So it would make more sense if this was someone pretending to be Doctor Strange. There's also a few hints. This devil in disguise placard. The wizards on the Halloween decoration also look exactly like Doctor Strange, almost like they were enchanted to look that way to push Peter toward the Sanctum Sanctorum. So why would Mephisto pose as Strange? Because this allows him to earn Peter's trust, just like Mysterio did. Like I said before, Peter doesn't go to Strange's house once, he keeps coming back to him, letting Doctor Strange shape his journey into this new world. And he needs Peter's help to do this, because the spell requires a human being's wish to make it happen. Maybe Peter even finds out about this and steals this box because it can stop Mephisto, but then Strange / whatever secret bad guy he is stops him by pushing his astral form out of his body. The box even bears the seal of Ashanti, which also appears on the roof of the Sanctum Sanctorum. New Rockstars also theorized that this could be a kind of Ghostbusters trap that can trap beings from the multiverse. If that's the case, then maybe Faux Strange here would be trying to stop Peter from capturing these villains. Also, a bad guy posing as a mentor figure, kind of a running theme in the MCU Spider-Man movies. So Mephisto fits the perfect profile. Someone who knows magic, could push Peter's astral form out of his body, and wants the multiverse to exist. In the Earth X comics, Mephisto keeps traveling through time because every trip creates a branch in the timeline, and he plans on escaping his final biblical fate by hopping from universe to universe. So Mephisto loves himself a multiverse. But you know who else loves a multiverse and could be a secret villain in the movie? Kang. Stay with me here. Kang is from the future and would have the ability to use holograms to mimic Doctor Strange's appearance, maybe even to overwrite Spidey's Peter Tingle. He could use sophisticated machinery from the future to look like magic, all with the intention of using Peter to split off different timelines. So why would he need Peter's help? Because, as we've learned in the show What If, the multiverse is created by choices.
Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities.
Peter has to make a choice that splinters the multiverse. Also, if it were Kang, this would tie in much better to the whole multiverse saga that Marvel is building. So, if this isn't Doctor Strange, then where is he? Why didn't he interfere in WandaVision or even the events of Loki? So I'm going to throw out another final wild theory for you. The multiverse of madness could begin with Doctor Strange being held prisoner. He's being held captive either by Kang, Mephisto, or whoever else is pulling the strings in Spider-Man No Way Home. But what do you think, Screen Crush? I want to know your thoughts and theories down in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.